Hello and welcome to this introductory case study in this course, Finance and Accounting Fundamentals. So, in this lecture, we will take a look at a case of actually developing the understanding of fundamentals of accounting and finance. And this is a case study of how one manager finally understood accounting and finance fundamental. Uh, and in that, how did he or she move from the confusion and fear of numbers to comfortably reading financial statements and making sound decisions? And that happened by approaching accounting as a language of business and using a structured hands on learning path that we will show you. Right. So, what was the situation? What was the profile of the person? So, name mask, face mask for the sake of confidentiality and privacy. Let's say she is a Neha Rao, and as a background, she is 33 years old and works as a product and operations manager in a growing tech-enabled service company. And she's MBA in marketing, which is don't everyone have to be. But like many of all of us, she has avoided finance courses as much as possible and doesn't know about finance. So, what is the situation? What is the problem she is facing? So the problem started when Neha was promoted to business unit manager. Suddenly, she had to prepare annual budgets, justify investments in new features and hires, present monthly performance boards using P&L cash flows and KPIs, and discuss profitability with the CFO. Now, she felt lost. She felt lost when the CFO would say things like, your gross margin is shrinking even though revenue is up. The initiative looks good on P&L but is hurting cash flow. Your EBITDA is fine, but working capital is tightening. Now, Neha heard these words but didn't really understand them, right? And she said, I could manage people and projects, but when they show a P&L or balance sheet, how do I handle that? And she said, it feels like reading a foreign language. And her biggest fear was that I'm in a leadership role, but I don't truly understand the numbers. One day someone will notice and I will lose credibility. So that was the situation. So let's take a look at the challenge a little deeper. It's a challenge of making decision without numbers. So it happened with Neha proposing a new initiative, right? A customer loyalty program with discounts and reward. And her pitch was, it will improve retention, customers will love it. But during the review, the CFO asked, as he is or she is required to do, you know, what is the impact on gross margins? How long until we recover the cost of rewards? What is the projected payback period? How will this show up in our P&L and cash flow? And Neha could not answer, right? She could not answer these questions. And then the CFO said politely, your idea may be good, but without numbers, it's a guess, not a business case. And her proposal was put on hold. And that evening, she told a colleague, I have to fix this. I need to really learn accounting and finance, not just memorize the terms. So that's how the challenge dawned. Now, how did the turning happen? Now, she reframed the problem. Instead of saying, I am bad at finance, she told herself that accounting is the scoreboard of business. If I want to be a real business leader, I must understand the scoreboard. So she set a clear learning goal that in 6 months' time, I want to be comfortable in reading and explaining three things: income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow, and use them to support one solid business proposal. She wanted practical understanding, not exam style theory, because she was doing a job that required her to make use of these finance and accounting things, right? So that was the turning point. So what did she do? As a step one, she, built a simple conceptual map. Now, instead of jumping into formula, she started with intuition. She drew three big boxes in her notebook: profit and loss, P&L. How much did we earn versus spend over a period? Balance sheet. What do we own now? What do we owe? and what is left for owners at this point of time, and cash flow. How much did cash actually move in and move out? And she summarized in one line: P&L is performance, balance sheet is position of, and cash flow is the cash reality. And then she asked AI, you right? She asked AI like ChatGPT as a tutor, explain to me in simple language the differences between P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow with 2 to 3 line examples. And she kept asking unless it clicked to her. And she learned there that accounting is not about memorizing terms, it's a three connected stories about the same business, performance, position, and cash. So that was the first step in her learning. Then she, you know, used her own company numbers as a learning lab. Instead of, random textbook example, she used her, business unit's monthly P&L, company's annual financial statement, and with permission, she took last year's P&L to AI, right, and asked, here is a simplified P&L with numbers anonymized. Explain what this tells me about my business and business unit's performance in plain simple English. And AI pointed out that revenue growth is so and so versus previous, gross margins trend it told about, operating expenses, and profit before taxes. And Neha then cross checked with her CFO and asked, are these interpretations right? What should I worry about in this P&L, right? And the CFO, seeing her efforts, started informally mentoring her and told her, look at the gross margin first. This tells you if your core business is healthy. And every month she repeated this cycle. Look at the P&L, ask AI to explain, validate with a CFO or a finance colleague. And she learned faster because she was working with her own real numbers, not abstract examples. So that was the second step for her. The third step, she created a small practical micro cases for each fundamental, right? Like revenue recognition, in which there was a micro case of a 12-month subscription paid upfront, and the question that she had to answer was, do we recognize all revenue now or spread it? And she used AI to walk through, and that she asked it simply by show me how revenue is recognized monthly and how it appears in P&L and balance sheet, and that's where she learned. Second thing she learned was cost of goods, COGS and gross margin. Here is a case of a selling a software license that included a cloud cost and support cost. And she asked AI, which costs go into COGS versus operating expenses, and how does this change gross margin? Then third thing she had a case about was CapEx versus OpEx, where she had a micro case of buying services versus renting cloud infrastructure. And she asked AI, explain how each affects P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow differently. And last micro case that she did in that step was on accruals and provisions, where it was about receiving a service not yet invoiced. And she asked AI and finance both, how do we show this in the accounts? Why do we need to show it that way? And by repeatedly, using concrete mini scenario, these scenarios, plus AI explanations. She built an intuitive understanding of these finance concepts, which are hard to get sometimes. So, in the fourth step, she moved from understand to using finance. She practiced two main things: basic investment evaluation, in which and sensitivity analysis. In basic investment analysis, she took the postponed loyalty program idea and rebuilt it with numbers. With AI as a junior analyst, she asked AI to help her build a simple 3-year financial model for a loyalty program with X extra customers gained, Y increase in order value, and Z cost per reward point, and asked AI to show her incremental revenue, cost, gross profits, and payback period. And what did AI do? AI produced a rough model. She adjusted assumptions and asked CFO to review, and CFO said, now you are talking like a business owner, not just a marketer. For the sensitive analysis, then she asked AI, show me the how results change if my retention is 10% lower, costs are 15% higher, and summarize risk and what should I watch. And this taught her how small changes impact viability, and this idea of sensitive risk in financial decision. So, what did she learn in this whole thing? She learned that finance is not about exact prediction, right? It is about seeing scenarios and risk using numbers. So that's how she connected accounting to real life decision making. So next thing, to make learning stick, she did two things. She created a personal finance cheat sheet. With AI's help, she built two-page guide in which she defined in plain, asked it to define the plain English, revenue, gross margin, EBITDA, working capital, depreciation, etc., and also where to find each item in the statements and simple rules of thumb. If the gross margin goes down while revenue goes up, the cost rising too fast, right? Simple rule like high profit but negative operating means check receivables and inventory. She kept it next to her during the reviews. Second thing she did was weekly finance habit, right? In which every Friday for 30 minutes she picked up one topic, say working capital, ROC, break even, etc., and asked AI, teach me this as if I'm a 15-year-old. This give me, and then give me two practical examples. And related it back to her unit and by saying, how does working capital play out in our subscription business? And as a result of that, within 3 to 4 months, the pattern become familiar. Right. So 6 months later, she presented the revised loyalty program to leadership, right? And her presentation included clear problem and idea, 3 year financial projection in simple way, gross margin impact, payback period, and ROI range from baseline to conservative case, and risk and conditions of success. Now the CFO said, this is now a strong financially backed proposal. I am comfortable supporting a pilot. And even the CEO remarked, you now talk in terms of both customer language and financial language. And that's what we need in business leaders. And the pilot was approved. Internally, colleagues started asking her, right? How did you suddenly become so comfortable with financials? Can you help me understand my P&L? And she was now not a financial expert, but she was no longer afraid of the numbers, right? So a literate finance manager. So let's take a look at this step-by-step model that you can also use. Starts with framing the big picture in which you understand the three statements that we talked about, and then you immerse in real statements using your own company's or unit's financial, asking AI plus your finance colleagues to interpret them. Then narrate with micro cases, learn each concepts with small concrete examples, apply to decisions, build simple model for your real projects, costs, revenue, payback, scenario. Normalize the vocabulary. Create and use a 1 to 2 page cheat sheet for common terms and what they mean for your business. And create weekly learning rituals, 30 to 60 minutes weekly. Pick one topic, ask AI for each, and simply relate it to your work. And engage with finance people. Ask questions. Review your interpretation. Treat finance team as partners and teachers. So, what's the final takeaway? See, understanding accounting and finance fundamental is not about becoming a CFO. It's about being able to read the story behind the numbers and make better decisions, business decisions. At an individual level, this requires developing finance and accounting excellence, means seeing financial statements as three connected stories, learning through real company numbers, just not textbooks, using tools as AI, as patient tutors, and financial colleagues as guide, practicing on actual decisions on projects, pricing investment, not abstract exercises, and building small, consistent learning habits rather than, cramming. So that's what we have for you as a final takeaway. So what do we do next? We get on with looking at various fundamentals of finance and accounting. Like you see many here, we will begin by accounting and business, and then accounting, and then we'll go to finance. And that's what we do as we go forward. We'll give you first a quick overview of this. So thank you so much for this introductory case study that you have looked at. I hope you can beginning to learn new things, beginning to enjoy. And I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture. Please feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer your questions, and do download the PDF file to take a look at anything that you need to.